I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday. I know my kingdom awaits, and they've forgiven my mistakes. I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. 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 Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday. I know my kingdom awaits, and they've forgiven my mistakes. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
Good morning, Awakening Hearts. Welcome to Awakening Hearts Radio. I am your host. My name is Tess Figueroa of Open Heart Mind Coaching. And just would like to welcome you all to today's topic, which is the true meaning of surrender. Creating a distinction between surrender and resignation. And my intention is to break down, what it is we are surrendering to in a way that is not self-abandoning into powerlessness or martyrdom. Instead, co-create with the life that is wanting to happen through us as an expression of us. So it's going to be a wonderful discussion. So thank you for joining me. And I want to thank Sprinkles. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for always, your willingness to host the show and just everything. You and Peg are really, you're believing in me is spiraling out of control, exponential trajectory out there. So I just want to acknowledge you for everything that you're giving. It's got ripple effects. So we're changing the face of the planet, even though we don't see it yet. But it's happening.
I don't know.
Yes, we are doing that. So if we're just breathing that in and then really believing in it, it's whatever we believe in, we create. So anyway, did you get snowstorm there where you are? Because we did here in Minneapolis. And even the snowstorm here in Minneapolis was definitely a lesson. It was teaching us a lesson of the true meaning of surrender. And I was laughing at all the memes out there on Facebook. People have this creativity, right? There was a giraffe all the way up to its, throat with high up on snow. And it's this, ability to turn what would have been a bad situation into something creative. That was amazing to me. We had an insane amount of snow for 3 days. And surely, it can be viewed as a disruption in our lives. And I really just loved seeing how people got creative instead and make the best out of what could potentially be bad. They instead chose to make the most of it by engaging their creative juices and spreading joy and laughter. I was laughing at all the, messages on Facebook, despite being snowed in and stuck, with 2 to 3 feet of snow that fell on us nonstop here in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. And then there were those who expressed disgust and disappointment, the energy of, I've had it with this snow. And that's really the same energy too that I received from my clients. They were not necessarily experiencing a huge onslaught of snow, but in their personal experiences, I heard them say they've had it. And there's an energy of resignation there, right? So we're talking about distinction between surrender and resignation. They were like, I've had it. They were close to giving up, or they were really confused, or they're just really angry. And I always talk on this radio show, the common theme my clients are experiencing in the past week. And I received a lot of messages of frustration, and I stood my ground and hold space for them. And that's a bulk of what I do as an awakening coach, to hold space for truth. Stand my ground in the knowingness that my clients and everyone is going to come through it. And they did, right? Spoiler alert, they did. But usually when people are in the storm, they cannot see beyond the mess. And it's so easy to believe the reality that we're experiencing. And yet, they felt my presence, my energy as I guided them along the path. And they cleared they surrendered to the experience of what it was they were being shown, what it is that they were meant to experience. And that's why they have me as an awakening coach, to guide them along their path to awakening. And the thing is, once you say yes to Awakening Heart, and if you're listening to the show, you are called to awakening. And there should be a disclaimer to the show once you listen to the show. Kidding aside, once you invite in the shifts in consciousness, it's also going to bring up whatever it is, blocks, resistance, barriers that's active in your cellular memory, in your energetic field, whatever it is. This blocks and resistance are not your fault. Let's just say that first, okay? This blocks and resistance are happening outside conscious awareness. And when they do come up, we're not meant to hang on to it. They're meant to clear and go. But what's happening is, in our fear, we're hanging on to them even more. We're clinging to the blocks and resistance, thinking it will keep us safe, thinking it is what we need to survive in this world. But, you need to let go. Because what it is that you're clinging on to survive, you're not meant to survive. You're meant to thrive. You're meant to create your experience. But when we're hanging on to old belief systems, old blocks and memories, it's actually, again, it's happening outside of conscious awareness. You are holding on unknowingly to dense energies that weigh you down, that repels the grief that you deserve in life, from happening, from testing, from birth into Asian. I said, I was taking the program, BBC, chasing something out there, not knowing we are abandoning that desires. In other words, what you are surfing, what you are searching for, are behind. You can search for health, for people, for business income, repercussion, above, until you can deeply from Nisha, surrender the mindfulness, and the truth of who you are. You will never find it from the side of you. What you already done, you will instantly better situation that will mirror back to you all the lack of everything you're looking for. Meaning, you're focused on, I need this to have this, and the more lack will be reflected back to you until you wake up that you already have it all. That is the awakening process. Now, my personal journey, and I didn't understand this, my desire from when I was little was just to go back home to God. I didn't understand it, with a young mind, but I just wanted to die so that I can go home where I belong. And I knew on some level that I didn't belong where I was. So I grew up with resistance, but not really knowing I was in resistance. Does that make sense? So my desire has always been to come home. And there's many levels to that, to come home to me, to come home to my heart, to come home to my soul, to come home to heaven, to be one with my Creator. And I'm understanding now, like I said, it was not always clear, at least intellectually, it was not clear. It didn't make sense whatsoever that it was oneness that I desired. I just had a deep knowing that there was something more that I kept shaking off because it didn't make sense. It wasn't logical, right? I was gifted with this accountant and logical brain. So you can just imagine the degree of resistance and exhaustion. I was so exhausted fighting it. And I had to go through so much just to allow myself to surrender my critical and logical brain and surrender to my heart and start seeing from my heart. It was an excruciating process to let go of the mind's need to control, let go of the mind's need to know, let go of the mind's need to have my ducks in a row. But then again, like I said, I was trained to be an accountant, right? That was part of my job, to be in that safety, certainty world, but to predict the future, right? To predict for any contingency. But then, I needed to learn to let go of the over controlling, or the need to over control, to over exert effort and all that. And another aspect of that, or another layer, is to let go of my heart's protection wall. Any barriers that I put up to protect my heart from getting hurt, I had to let go of that. I needed to dismantle my heart wall so I can feel from the heart and not feel and be controlled and led by fear any longer. And that's why my business called Open Heart, Open Mind. I had to learn to open my heart, open my mind, and heighten this sense of awareness and intuitiveness and guidance that was never out there to begin with, and it's already been here all along. We had been robbed of our ability to think for ourselves. We had been robbed of our ability to trust ourselves. So we always doubted ourselves, and we always questioned how we knew stuff. And we always needed some kind of validation and permission, and, needed someone else to confirm our truth. But really, if you think about it, you have always known, right? And until I learned to open my heart and mind and learn to merge them together so that they are functioning from oneness, not bickering back and forth like an old married couple, When finally there's harmony inside of me, and finally I was functioning from that union, only then did I see clearly. I started really understanding myself better, and I started valuing myself, or starting to see my worth and value and contribution and my uniqueness. And I no longer needed to compare myself to anyone. So that is the surrender I'm talking about. Surrendering to you, the truth of who you are. And you may have heard this about me, but all my life, right? As I said in the beginning, I just wanted to die. I wasn't suicidal, but I was just thinking, I just wanted to come back to my maker. As a child, I've written many blog posts about this struggle, because this was the struggle that I had to overcome, is this wanting to die and not wanting to be here, right? As a child, I was crying to God, why did you send me here? Nobody cares what I have to say. Nobody's listening. Why did you send me here? You made a mistake. You sent the wrong person. Nobody gives a shit. Just take me back. So just take me back. I do not want to be here. That had been the recording, or the looping message that went on and on and on in my brain, right? It's the resistance of not wanting to be here, or the resistance of not knowing my value, my purpose, or why I came here to be. And sometimes the not knowing of that, because of the amnesia, right, of the programming. We've been put to sleep from the beginning. We've been put to sleep. So now we're waking up. And one of my breakthrough was, I was actually leading a mastermind when I had this realization. And this is the breakthrough that helped my mind surrender. Make sense? It helped my mind to relax even more. It was the realization that I do not have to die to go to heaven. I did not have to die to reunite with God, with my maker, with creator itself. I did not have to die, but instead I can help create heaven on earth by first creating my own heaven on earth, and then teach others to find their harmony and union with themselves and create their piece of heaven on earth. No one needs to die. I mean, I'm not talking physically, right? But I'm just talking about, there was this persistence of thought inside my head that I had to correct, that I don't need to die. But of course, we all have to go through that process. We're beyond this physical existence. We're not just physical bodies. And this body is limited, but not our spirit. We go on. On a spiritual sense, we go on. Right? So the more my mind tried to control and limit me, my existence, my experience, my expressions, the more I felt dead inside. And my own mind was killing me, limiting my growth, limiting my contribution, limiting the value and gifts that I came here to give. Which means life was not worth living if life was to be lived in a limited soul-sucking existence. And on the one hand, I'm aware of this yearning, but on the other hand, my mind was stopping or couldn't grasp that there was something beyond that I was experiencing and living and expressing as me. And now I can see that I have the best of both worlds, right? I am human and divine. I'm physical and spiritual. And my mind and my heart now living congruently instead of fighting against each other. That's the beauty of surrender, true surrender. And, this I believe what my purpose here is, to help humanity create heaven on earth on both personal and collective level. And I believe that we all have that purpose. When the veils are off, when the veils are illusion come down, that's really what we are all here, because we are this energy that can create. And not can create, but we are this energy of joy. We are this energy of heaven. We are this energy of divinity that is made physical. We are living, we've become flesh. And we realize that after all, the veil and masks comes off. And anyway, that's kind of a long story there. And what I was saying is that, I'm witnessing many clients, many friends, my whole entire Facebook feed, who are in resistance to their own heaven. And I know and I recognize it because of the story that I just shared, right? I did the exact same thing. I was in my own way, out of protection, out of security, out of safety. I put myself in the box thinking that I was protecting myself, that it was the highest form of love to protect myself. But really I was protecting myself or limiting my own experience and expression. And as long as I was in the box, I was dying. And no wonder I wanted to die. So having had that experience, I also have now this, and I appreciate it so much to have this deep compassion and understanding for why people behave the way they behave. It's totally normal human nature. But then we are being asked, we are being invited by our own divinity to wake up, to surrender. Our own divinity is calling us to surrender to our true nature behind or beyond the confines of the human mind, beyond the confines of the physical limitations. So many beautiful people are at the cusp, so very close to freedom, and all they have is intellectual understanding of what freedom and soul liberation looks like. They delay, they fight, procrastinate, resist, because letting go of control and protection and ego identity feels like hell, feels like death. And like I said, I acknowledge, this because I went through this hell. It's the dark night of the soul for others, for myself, definitely. It's like going through the eye of the needle. And it's a very difficult journey, but it is the journey. It's very necessary to claim the very thing that we desire most. And what we desire most, it's inherent, it's there, it's innate in us. We cannot put a blindfold any longer. We need to look at it. So I didn't know that what I desired most was oneness. I couldn't name that desire. For how can you name something you've never experienced, right? When everywhere I looked, there was chaos, misunderstanding, conflict, fighting. How can one identify what they're searching for when they have no clear picture of what it is from a human perspective? Until we surrender. For me, oneness first looked like a longing to be loved, to belong, to feel needed, so that my life would matter to someone, to anyone. It got so desperate there. Anybody, please, anyone, can anybody please just love me? Does that resonate with anyone? And then, anyway, we'll continue with that thought. Don't go away. We'll be talking more about surrender. Let's go and take a break. We are back live. So good. Whew. So yes, we're talking about surrender versus resignation. Yeah, I was just talking about before the break that oneness, I didn't have the name for it, but I was longing for something so deep. I didn't know what it was. It was a deep longing, and I couldn't understand it. I had a wanting for something, and for a while I was my worst enemy and critic. How can I not want everything I worked hard for? Isn't that the biggest joke in life? Is everything you've ever worked hard for is already here, and yet it's not enough? What do you mean it's not enough? The houses, the job, the career, everything, nothing was good enough. I wasn't ever good enough. What was wrong with me? It was just the weirdest experience of wanting something so bad but not knowing what it was, and going on something on some level. I knew what it was, and I knew I was being guided to it, But as long as I was in resistance, as long as I was in my brain or my mind or my ego or not wanting to get hurt, I was getting in the way of that I was searching for. And I thought I had it too at some point. I was a single mom for 15 years. And for some of you who are listening to me or experiencing me for the first time, or for those of you who don't know, I was a single mom for 15 years. And the first part of my single parenting, I was so connected. I was so divinely connected. I felt that oneness, that magic, that, you know, even though my life was in shambles and I didn't know what step to take, and people kept asking me, are you not worried? Are you not, afraid? No, right? I said, no. Why would I be worried? Why would I be afraid when I felt so guided the whole time? And all I had to do was say yes. And opportunities open up. Opportunities would open up even before I asked for them. I always said my prayers were answered even before I asked, or even before I said a prayer. It was that connection, but somehow I lost it, that connection, and I couldn't understand it. I worked 2 jobs and I started carrying the world's problem, not the world's problem, but I start being the superwoman to everyone else, and then I totally self-abandoned, right? So I spun out of control, spiraled negatively, and that's how I got to where I am now, where I get to teach people to go beyond the mind, to go beyond the emotions that they numbed, and go back and start feeling again, to go beyond the physical reality, the money, and connect on a conscious level, on a deliberate process called creation. Connect to that spiritual, whatever it is that's calling, that deep longing that I'm talking about. We each have a deep longing, a yearning. And that's whatever that is for you. I can only share what's true for me. You need to connect with what is true for you and come back to wholeness and oneness. And I have conversation with so many people who are on this path to awakening. And I'm sure if you're listening, you may resonate. And I want to hear it if you do resonate with it, where you have gotten in your own way, where your ego mind, your fearful mind, and okay, when I say ego, I don't mean it's bad, okay? I don't say that with judgment. What I refer to as ego is the part of us, the wounded part of us, the wounded child inside of us that has not grown, that has not matured, that has not spiritually matured, and therefore is still trapped in trauma and painful memories. Does that make sense? That's what I refer to as ego mind. So when functioning from woundedness, the ego needs to self-protect. But ego on its own is not a bad thing. It's a part of us. Right? Ego has gotten such a bad rap and got beaten up so bad in the spiritual world as something that is bad, that we need to cut away and we need to, not identify with or totally ignore and deny. But denying your own ego creates more judgment and separation. So ego has a purpose, and it will always act the way it does until it is embraced and accepted and totally loved up, back to wholeness and oneness. I always teach about no parts left behind, and that includes the ego. We cannot leave the ego behind. Same with the brain or the mind. I heard a coach of mine, and I love her, but she says, our brain is not our friend. And I'm sorry, I love you, but I cannot be lied to like that. And so please stop spreading and regurgitating more lies and distortions like that. It only recreates more lies and distortions, which creates more division and separation. And we are in the stage of evolution where we need to come back to wholeness. When we are when we are fighting against ourselves, that's inner conflict. That's what I mean by fragmented and divided and separated. So when we are all over the place with our energy and separated into good, bad, right, wrong, we experience ourselves as separated, as split energy, as conflicted. And from split or conflicted energy, we also create conflicting realities. So I can't emphasize that any more than I have. So we need to consciously claim and live from oneness, not separation, not judgment, not division, but oneness. And first, in our body, mind, and spirit. Oneness, merging the heart and mind, merging the left and the right brain, merging body, mind, spirit alignment. This is the surrender I'm talking about. We need to heal our wounded, overprotected concept of self. We don't disown it like it's bad, malignant, infectious, unworthy. Again, I'm going to emphasize it. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but that creates more harm and self-conflict and perversion and fragmentation, and which leads us to feeling scattered rather than having a unified way of beingness to us. It's about healing. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing, we're not broken. It just feels that way because we're functioning from fragmentation. So we need to bring all parts of ourselves, claim all of our parts, and bring it all back together, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever concept or labeling we learned and got programmed into, and then love ourselves up unconditionally, fully, no parts left behind. Okay? Make sense? We got a comment here. When we refuse to change, it can at times make things harder. We continue and it gets worse. Instead, we should go with the flow of change, awareness that change always comes in little ways or big ways, but being open to the universe's direction. Yes, that's so beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing that. So anyway, yeah, so I hope I'm trying to remember what I got caught up in the talk of the ego, right? The ego is not bad. There's nothing that is bad. Everything is spiritual. Okay? Everything has a positive intention. Even the way I am so aware of my diction and trying to over enunciate so I can be understood. Talking about self-concept, right? Yeah, we have this awareness of ourselves that we need to go beyond. Thank you. So coming to fullness, loving up everything, including the ego, no parts left behind. When we recognize ourselves in conflicting states of emotions and, projections of blame and shame, and that happens when we haven't fully allowed our ego to spiritually mature. The ego needs to come. So it's like the merging of the heart and the mind. The ego and the soul needs to also merge. Feel that. The ego needs to merge with the soul. And for a lot of people, this concept might not even be, Tess, you're talking shit. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, it's an invitation for you to really love up all parts of you, including and especially your wounded child, the ego, so that all projections of blame and shame dissolves. All you've got is a surrender to you, your beingness, come home to you. You're no longer putting your finger out there, because of you I did this, because of you I did this. No, you're totally in control and mastering your energy. It's beautiful when you come from that place of union with your own self, union with something bigger than your self-concept. It's really and really, when I hear my clients and people around me of complaining, and it's all different levels of awareness and consciousness, and it's perfect. Wherever you are is perfect. Not, your soul cannot be rushed into awakening, but just the awareness, the fact that you're listening to the show, or you're tuning in and also carrying the energy with me. We're melding energies here. It's a collective consciousness, right? So wherever you are is perfect. There's no judgment there. And all I can do as an awakening guide is continue to raise my own consciousness and speak when I can, and provide tools and guidance to build bridges between the mind and the heart, between the ego and the soul. And those who are ready to work with me, I can assist them one-on-one through private coaching, and really, and even if you are not called to work with me, it's okay. Yeah, that just means you're meant to work with someone else, or someone else is meant to be your teacher. And sometimes our teacher is not a human being. And I've experienced that too, where I was, in the 2 years that I was traveling, my teachers were not human beings. I was taught by my own guidance team of angels and spirits. And like I said, wherever you are in your experience, in your awakening, it's perfectly okay. It's perfectly perfect. And that's the perfection of it. So, oh my gosh, there were so many times I felt like I was talking to myself, but then all of a sudden I feel so much support in ways that I didn't imagine it could come. So it's like really blasting open fields of possibility in ways that I could never imagine, that in ways that I thought I was, oh my God, you're just disillusioned, Tess. This is really not happening. But you know what? It is really happening. And I bet you anything you are also experiencing some bizarre awakening moments. And just, I would love to hear about it. Email me at Tess@openheartmindcoaching.com. There's so many awakenings that's happening with us, but because it's not safe to talk about it out there, we kind of push it down and not talk about it. But here at Awakening Hearts Radio, it is safe to talk about your awakening, because this is about you. It's what matters. And what matters most is you. Okay, so if you are still listening, I bet you are also knowing on a deep level, just not wanting to ruffle feathers out there. Like I said, it's not safe to speak awakening things out there. But if you're still listening, the invitation is to stand on your own strength and energy. And that can be very shaky in the beginning. But this I tell you, please keep on going. You will draw your own strength from your own source, meaning internally, not from external validation or from external permission or whatever. Internally, you will draw your own source from within you, regardless of how others perceive you. And one day, you will be the one shining your light, paving the way for others, just by you being you. You don't have to have your own radio show. Energy transmits even without you having to exert energy. You are just being the energy. And part of cleaning up our vibration, really, and this is the surrender that needs to happen, is to go beyond intellectual understanding and connecting with your own source from deep inside of you. You know, yes, you can go to myself for example. You can go to myself, and I'm not I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm not here to heal you. Only you can heal yourself. What I can do is guide you and make a path a little clearer for you, because when you're in it, like I said in the beginning, you can't see. And when you cannot see, our human tendency is to freak out and go into anxiety or worry or fear or whatever. But there's nothing really for me to fix for you. It's all just awareness and willingness to shift your consciousness, right? You and only you will master your own energy, master your thoughts, your mindset, your emotions. I'm just here as a guide. And everyone else, you go to Reiki healing, someone pulls a tarot card or an angel reading for you. If you think you go to someone and expect yourself to be healed instantaneously, sorry. The work of energy healers and even doctors, can only help you to a certain extent, but at some point you have to step into it, your own power. You have to reclaim your own power and do the healing yourself. And healing, what I mean by healing is what I've been talking about the whole time. Healing means wholeness, bringing yourself back to wholeness with no parts left behind. Okay, so when it comes to mastery, you will be tested. And I'm remembering surrendering to surrender, which is very intimidating and terrifying, and which is why I am here to say it's okay. It's okay. Right? At first I was like, fine, I surrender. Just show me the way. That's not the kind of surrender that I'm talking about. It didn't work for me. You can try it. What's happening is there's a merge that's happening. So I talked about the merge between the heart and the mind, the ego and the soul. There's another level of merge that's happening, which is your will and divine will merges. It's not a surrender where you are stripped off of your power. That's resignation. For a long time I was doing that. I was like, okay, thy will be done. Just tell me. And yet nothing gets done. Nothing. I got even more infuriated and frustrated and blah, blah, blah. Why? Because I was not owning my energy. I was coming from submissiveness, powerlessness, helplessness, victim mentality. It was frustrating. I thought I was, I thought I was owning my energy, but it wasn't enough. Wasn't enough because I was still at the bottom of it all. I was still collapsing my energy. Fine, So frustrating to go from that, bridging that, the human and the divine. So frustrating. Like I was like, oh, what do you want from me? I've given up everything. I've been praying thy will be done. I don't want anything else. I just want to serve you. Just tell me what to do. Well, I didn't know that that was martyrdom. I was being a martyr. And that was not what was being asked of me and of you. You know, being a martyr will not take you places. Not going to score you any favors. Not going to score you any points. When you awaken, you are waking up to higher pursuit of the light. It's a point of no return. You're not being asked to abdicate control and power. You are being asked to merge and lean to your own source. Tap into your own source of power and control from within. Okay, so that is the surrender that I'm talking about. And this is a guidance that you already are experiencing. It's a quiet exploration, and sometimes it's intimidating because we're being asked to surrender our mind, surrender to our hearts. There's a whole lot of trust that's being required of us. And yeah, so what you are surrendering is the woundedness, the powerlessness, the victimness, the lack mentality, the not enoughness, the unworthiness, the not deservingness. It's not a difficult choice. It's so easy to choose it, but to actually maintain that level of mastery where every day you are choosing it, every day you will have to renew your choice and commitment. And this is what I want. This is my truth. This is my freedom. You know, I don't want to live life limited any longer. Those were the choices I had to make every day to come to this place of oneness inside of me. And I don't want to go back to sleeping any longer. I don't want to die slowly any longer. You know, that slow death that was the trajectory of my life for a while. But then it was also part of the process, and that's the mystery of life. It's you're experiencing it because there's a reason you're experiencing it, but while you're experiencing it, you're resisting it and denying it and suppressing it and don't want to experience it any longer. But that's the mystery of life, and that's surrender. Not having to know all the answers, not having to know all the explanation, but surrendering to that voice inside of you, to that still voice of wisdom inside of you that is already you. Okay, so if you have any questions, I know this is this is Awakening Radio Show. We go deep in this radio show. If you have any questions, you can connect with me at Tess at openheartmindcoaching.com. Please do share with me your insights, your questions, any triggers. I may have pushed some buttons. I may have said something that you have not heard before. And that's the intention, is to break the glass ceilings, the glass walls that we keep bumping into but we cannot see. And I really love to hear from you where you are being called to surrender. What is it that you are surrendering? Topics for next show. I'll wait for guidance on that one. But do let me know if you have questions. I'd love to hear your questions, and I'm going to build your questions into the show. I'd like this show to be about you, not about me. At first, I'm all about talking about myself, a lot of my clients' information is sensitive. I can't just talk about them. I can share the general gist of it, but if you have particular questions that you like answers to, that's one way of working with me. Not everyone is ready to commit to awakening. If you're tipping your toe and interested but not really, but you have questions, and your doubtful mind is getting in the way, but what if and this and that, do write me at Tess at Open Heart Mind Coaching, and I will make your questions, your concerns, your comments a part of the show, and I will talk less about myself in the future. Is that a deal? Thanks, everyone. Again, thank you to Off the Cuff Radio for sponsoring Awakening Hearts Radio. It's been a pleasure. I love you all. Thank you. God bless. And see you next week. Bye-bye.
As strange as it may sound, when there still things seem to